poor test taker. I might cry. Low pass, high fail. Those were the words that plagued my medical school career. Things got really bad for me my second year of medical school. I was having difficulty figuring out what it is that I was doing wrong when it came to studying for my exams. Around December, I was approached by an academic advisor, and she asked me to decelerate, which means to take second year over the course of 2 years. And I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in God. I believe in being in tune with the Holy Spirit, and God did not tell me to decelerate, so I didn't. And how do you say that to an institution full of scientists? How do you explain that you are going to rely on your faith to get you through something when science is what most people know in medical school? So I decided to go ahead and do what God told me to do, which was to keep going. I did not decelerate. However, I continued to struggle through school. Second year, first semester, I basically failed every single final exam I had. But I had until the end of the year, which was May, to get it all together and figure out what was going wrong and fix my grades. That Christmas was extremely difficult for me because I just didn't know where to go. So second semester, I came back with the best attitude that I possibly could, and another advisor reached out to me, someone I had never heard from before. I didn't even intend to open her email, but I did. And the first thing that I saw was, "You were not in trouble." And that immediately put me at ease. And so I opened her email, and she was saying that she wanted to help me figure out how to improve my academic performance, which was great because prior to that, I had received an email from counseling services asking me what was going on in my life that precluded me from doing well in school. And to me, that was a major assumption, and it made me feel even worse about myself because I didn't have anything going on in my life that could keep me from doing well in school. I just didn't know what I was doing wrong when it came to preparing for my exams. So I began to meet with this teacher, and she helped me learn that I needed to do more practice questions. And in doing more practice questions, my grades began to show vast improvement. I worked with her weekly, bi-weekly on exam blocks, and I started to pass my classes. Now, it came to be May, and it was about to be final exam week, and so I was approached by the academic advisor again a week before finals, and she asked me one more time if I wanted to decelerate, and my answer was no. At that time, she had given me all the information. She had given me every single thing that I needed to know to make an informed decision. She told me all of the different scenarios and how they would play out. And in that moment, at the very end of our meeting, she decided to look at me and say, "Anya, I have never seen anyone in your predicament make it out of medical school successfully." I just want to stop right here because there are students and faculty who have tried to convince me that it was okay for her to say that to me in that moment. And I just want to say it's not. And for anyone who's ever been spoken to like that by an educator, I'm so sorry. And I hope that you continue on your path and keep going. So that's what I did. I continued on, and I ended up passing everything I needed to for second year. And I was on my way to study for step 1, which is our first board licensing exam. They had asked me to delay my step 1. I didn't feel the need to do so because I had passed my mini boards, and I felt like I would be ready to take it in June. And so I sat for my exam in June. I studied the best I could. I was preparing 8 hours a day. I lived like a recluse. I wasn't talking to family or friends, didn't see anyone. And I took my exam. And then I started on my psychiatry rotation. When you get your exams back at my school, an academic advisor calls you with your score, and if you don't get a phone call, you can assume that you failed the exam. So I was with a student who had a last name lower in the alphabet or further along in the alphabet, and at lunchtime he said to me, "Hey, I got a call. I think it's about step 1. Did you get a call?" And I didn't. And automatically I'd begun to panic because my last name came before his in the alphabet, and I was extremely fearful of what my score would be. So I waited until I got home. I never received a phone call, and it turns out that I failed my Step 1 exam. When I saw my score, I just could not believe that all of my hard work and dedication led to what I saw. And it really was devastating. So the assistant dean of my school called me, and she told me that I could finish out my psychiatry rotation, but after that I would have to stop and start preparing for this exam again. So that's exactly what I did, and I tried to maintain the best attitude possible, but at the same time I was just so tired. I was so tired of everything going wrong for me, and for me to have to work so hard just to get to the next level. After everything I'd already done to get into medical school, I was still struggling, and that was so frustrating for me. So I went on to study for my exam, and I thought I was ready to take it, but the only thing was I couldn't pass a practice test. And so I reached out to a classmate who had already passed, and she said to me, "Anya, you have done more than the average student to prep for this exam. You've done more than I have to prep for this exam. I don't know what you're doing wrong. I don't know. But I've known other students to take this exam and pass it without passing a practice exam. So perhaps that will be you too." And so again, I took a leap of faith. My exam was supposed to be in September of that year. I pushed it to October. I still hadn't passed a practice exam, so I decided to go on ahead and take it and just see. And then I needed a break. I needed a break from Atlanta. I needed a break from school, so I decided to go to New York. My brother Aaron lives in Brooklyn, and he said I could stay with him for a few weeks. My aunt lives in Jersey, and so she would cart over food for me to eat so I wasn't eating him out of house and home. She would bring over different designs that I could wear because I had just started my fashion blog at the time, but I didn't have any money for fashion. One of the things that bothered me the most about failing that exam is that I could not get financial aid. I could not get financial aid until I passed that exam. And so my parents stepped in and started to pay for everything. And my mom asked me if I wanted to move home. But my dad said no, that I should stay in my apartment because he knew I could not take one more regression. Whew. And so they paid for everything while I was retaking my exam. I went to New York and I learned the subway system, and I tried to live the best life that I could and wait for my exam scores. I thought I had passed, but when I opened up my scores, I had improved, but I was 6 points off. 6 points. And so I didn't even give myself a chance to really feel the disappointment this time because I just wanted to get it over with. I was so tired. And so I didn't give myself a chance to feel what was going on, but at the same time, I told God, I cried out to him and I said, if you want me to continue this journey, I need a sure enough sign from you today by 12 a.m. that this is what you want me to do. And I kid you not, a young lady from my great uncle's church called me that day around 6 p.m. and she said, I'm a non-traditional pre-medical student just like you, and I have questions about how to get into medical school because that is the path that I want to take. Can you help me? And so I said, okay, God. Okay. And that young lady is now a first-year medical student at my school. It went on like this for a very long time. People calling me and asking me for advice. Meanwhile, my entire career is in limbo. And there were people who would call me asking about the Step 1 exam and I would advise them based on what I had learned not to do, and they would pass. Not because of me, but certainly with a little of my help. And I was very happy for them, but still that was frustrating for me, if you can imagine, to have my shortcomings used to help other people along while I'm just sitting there and nothing's happening for me. I got back to studying, I got back to Atlanta, and I continued to work. I worked until I could not work anymore. I studied so hard for that exam, and I kept pushing it back, until ultimately I decided I'm going to take this exam in February. I took the exam, and I waited. This time, when I got my score, I knew I had passed. I just knew it, because it was time. I felt like it was time. 3 points. I was 3 points off, and I had taken the exam for the third time. And at my school, 3 strikes and you're out. So that's when I got upset. I had used DIT, which is Doctors in Training. It's a $750 course my parents had paid for, and it's supposed to work. And I started telling faculty that's what I used, and that's when I started to get the looks like, oh, well, that should have worked for you. I don't know what else to say to you. I don't know what else to tell you. And that's when people started asking me about Plan B. And that really depressed me. If I wasn't depressed before, that certainly did a job on me. So I cried. I threw things around my apartment. I got angry with God. I questioned God. And my parents ended up making me stay the night at their house. The next day I hit the ground running and basically began waiting for and determining what I would have to do for my dismissal hearing, because I was up for dismissal. And so with the dismissal hearing at my school, you have to basically reapply to medical school, which was extremely humiliating for me. I had to get 3 letters of recommendation to assess whether or not I even should be able to stay. And I also had to write a letter to the committee that watches students' academic progress and explain to them why I deserved to stay at school. My academic mentor, who helped me through second year, helped me determine that it wasn't more material review I needed to do, it was more so that I needed to learn how to take tests. I didn't know how to take standardized exams. And so that's what we said we were going to focus on if they chose to give me another exam retake. So the day of my dismissal hearing, I put on my suit from my interview. It no longer fit because I had spent a year almost sitting down at my desk studying for an exam that I did not pass. I didn't breathe all the way to my dismissal hearing. And when I got there were so many people in that room. And I was just so intimidated and so afraid of what was going to happen. People began to ask me questions as I began to explain myself. I tried to help them understand that my new plan was to focus on standardized test-taking strategy instead of just focusing on content review. And the person who told me that she's never seen anyone in my predicament make it out of medical school successfully decided to sit there and kind of badger me and behave as though she didn't understand the difference between my past plan, which was content overview, and my new plan, which was strategy. Other people, however, were asking me questions about a potential retake and giving me advice, and so I thought that things were going in a good direction. An advisor told me that I would be called that day with the decision from the dismissal hearing, and I wouldn't have to wait more than a day. I got the call around 4 p.m. and the advisor said they decided to dismiss me. I asked her why, and they said it was because they had to follow policy. And before I was told that they would make their decision based on whether or not they felt like I could pass my exam. I increased my score each time I took this exam, and now I was ready to change up my study methods and focus on strategy for test taking. And in less than an hour, they had thrown away my 12 years of work to get into and to stay in medical school. I was so hurt by that. And so I began to ask the advisor on the telephone, what about the students who have a heart for patients? There has to be more to medicine than being able to pass exams. I can pass it if you give me one more chance. And she got annoyed, and she said to me, Anya, I'm going to get off the phone now. And she hung up in my face, and she said that as if she would never have to talk to me or see me ever again in her life. And that was the end of that conversation. So my parents consoled me as best as they could, and they tried to get me to focus on the appeal, because you have 10 days to appeal to the president of the school when you're dismissed. And I tried my best to focus on that. I was told by another student that he was promised a fourth opportunity to take this test if he needed it. And so I reached out to him and asked, well, who promised you that? And I decided to make a meeting with my parents and with that faculty member. And so my parents and I met with her, and she pulled out that handbook, that student handbook that I was so accustomed to seeing by now. And she said to me, you can be a healer without an MD. You can use your MPH, you can do other things, but the SAP committee does not feel like you'll ever pass your STEP exams. They don't feel like you'll ever pass your shelf exams. They don't feel like you're going to graduate ever. And so that's why they decided to dismiss you. And so I told her that I was going to be a healer, but as a medical doctor, whether it be at my school or at another. And we left the meeting. And I'm so glad that we took that meeting, because it gave me insight into what the SAP committee said about me, but not to me. And so my classmate told me that I should use that information to set up my appeal. Every single thing that the SAP committee said about me, I should go on ahead and make an argument against it. And that's exactly what I did. I had to email the president's office approximately 5 times before they emailed me back, and I was starting to get nervous because, again, you only have 10 days to make the appeal. They finally contacted me and set my appeal date. I was so nervous because I just felt like everything I had worked on was going to disappear. But I went on ahead and I prepared for my appeal. I found an article that said that students who don't pass step 1 can still match into residencies and that they can still go on to become great doctors. I got out all of my emails between me and certain faculty members to prove that I had worked, I had done what they had told me to, except for decelerating and pushing back my exam date. I had done everything else, and that I just needed another chance to focus on exam strategy. And so I met with the president, and she told me that it was a very sad day for her because they chose me for this school because they thought I could do it. Because she felt like the school chose me because I could do this. And she said that policies would have to change to accommodate students who had test-taking issues, perhaps. And I just said to her, please don't make those changes without me here. Let me benefit from them too. And so she said to me that she would let me know her decision within 4 days. And that was it. And I was on my way. That Christmas break, prior to my appeal and prior to my dismissal hearing, I received a bill from finance saying that I owed them $10,000 in cash because I had taken psychiatry, I had taken fundamentals of medicine, and I would get financial aid after I passed my exam, but financial aid was not retroactive. So I had to find a way to cover the courses that I had already taken on my own. A couple of days later, one of my sorors had written on my Facebook page that she knew of a scholarship for African American women in medical school and that I should check it out. I checked it out, and that scholarship was worth 10 grand. So I was supposed to go accept that scholarship the day after my appeal. I didn't even know if I should go accept it because I was still in limbo with my student status, but my parents told me that God does not work linearly and that I should go on ahead and accept it anyway, go to Virginia and just accept it on faith. And so that's what I did. And when I gave my acceptance speech, I started to share a bit of my story, a bit of my testimony that was not finished being written. And people came up to me saying that they were so blessed by it. And that just gave me hope because I felt like everything I was going through was not for nothing and that God was going to use it to bless others and to eventually bless me too. I got back to Atlanta after accepting my scholarship and I opened my inbox and a letter from the president had been sitting there since Friday saying that she was going to give me another chance to take my exam. And I was just so happy because I felt like God had done a miracle. I had been asking around for students who had been given a fourth attempt at that exam from our school, and it turned out there was only one. In a history of about 30 years, a faculty member was telling me there was only one student who'd gotten that chance. So what I was asking for was pretty much the impossible, and it happened. So I got back to studying. My academic mentor randomly found that we had a test-taking strategist at my school, and he just worked in a different department. And so we employed his services, and I started to see results. We worked so hard around the clock, and my exam date was set for September. I took the exam, and I went on faith that I had passed it this time. And I started living my life a little bit more. I started working more on surgery in the city. I started focusing on what would happen after the exam, and I just started praising God in advance after being very angry that this would be my situation for so long. Got my exam results a week before I intended to, and my heart was pounding, racing, as I was waiting for the system to load and refresh. And when I saw my score, all I could do was cry because I had passed it. I finally passed this exam, and I was on to my rotations the next Monday. Third year, I continued to struggle because I had to rebuild my confidence and my self-esteem from the ground up. That exam made me feel like I knew nothing. I was pimped hard, but I never stopped. I never, ever, ever stopped. And that's the message I want to communicate to you all today. Whatever your dream is, just don't stop. Don't stop. My story is still being written, and I'm grateful that I have a chance to have that story written. I'm grateful that I had an opportunity to attend my school and that they took a chance on me and gave me another chance when I needed it. And I take full responsibility for what happened with me and my test-taking challenges. I just wish my school had the resources in place or used the resources we had in place to help students like me who just needed extra help when it came to that strategy. I'm so grateful to be standing here as a medical doctor. I still can't believe that I'm saying that. I cannot believe that I was kicked out of school and got back in, and that God performed miracles to get me through. Using my test-taking strategist plan, I passed step 2 on the first try. I just want y'all to know that there is life after failure, and that no matter what anyone says, God is real, and He is a miracle worker, and He can do incredible things. Just continue to believe. My parents paid my bills for an entire year because they believed in me just that much. And so I want to thank them. I want to thank my family. And I want to encourage you all to just never, ever